friends, it's Cindy Brumbaugh from CindyLeeBDesigns.com, Independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. Today I'd like to show you a card I was inspired to make a couple years ago. I saw on my friend Leanne at WeInklings.blogspot.com. She had a cute fun fold note card and I wanted to make one. So I got to looking around, found some measurements, and then made myself this fun fold. And I put a little belly band around it. Squeeze your card a little bit to get the belly band around to hold the card together. Now I used the new Garden Impression Suite that's on page 128 and 129 of the new catalog. It has this Abstract Impressions photopolymer stamp set, floral images, thank you, and a few other fun sentiments in there. So I used this sentiment right there and this sentiment here. I didn't even use any of the flowers. My designer paper is doing all the work for me. And this designer paper, Garden Impressions, has so many colors in it. We've got regals, we've got brights, we've got subtles, we've got every color in here. We've got bright colors, we've got dark colors, we've got light colors. And the thing that's a little challenging though is it says that the neutral in here is Whisper White, which I don't really pick up on Whisper White. It's definitely not very vanilla. So that's the only challenge I had with this paper. So I decided most of the times when I use this paper, I'm just going to pick one of these nice light neutrals because most of the cards either have a So Saffron or a soft seafoam card base to it. I mean color base to it for the neutral. So that's what I decided to do on this card. I just used the soft seafoam as my card base, and that way when I do my card, this base is light enough for me just to write in there, or for whoever I give this card to, if they would like to write in there, they can put easily see through the softer, subtle color of soft seafoam. So to get started, let's go over a few colors on here. We can see here we've got Pacific Point, so I used that for my cardstock, and I also have So Saffron in there, and that's what I used for the belly band. And then I used the soft seafoam from this tag here, and for my scallop oval, I also used the Pacific Point. There is Night of Navy in here, but I just didn't really work it into there. Every other color just worked, so that's what I did. Now I am using a new green that we have, Shaded Spruce. It's a nice earthy green. I love that, like an evergreen. And I also used the Shaded Spruce 1/8 inch metallic ribbon. You'll find that back in with the accessories, and it's paired with a petal pink, and they're both 1/8 of an inch, which is perfect because when you're making a note card and it needs to fit into a note card envelope. Now note cards are mailable. They're 3.5 by 5, but I find that it's a little snug fit, especially if I layer or put a dimensional on or something. It's just a little bit too much to get it in there. So what I usually do is keep it 3.5 this way, but I bring down the 5-inch measurement a little bit, which I'll show you when I'm getting the card base ready, and that way it slides in and out of that note card very easily. When I first made this card, I had a lovely belly band with an extra layer on it, and I loved that Pacific Point with the So Saffron and then the Shaded Spruce ribbon. It really popped, but then when I went to pop it into the envelope, it wouldn't fit. So it was a little too bulky on the side, so I just took off the Pacific Point, and then I was able to slide it in very easily, even though so I'll just save this card to maybe put in a gift bag or something that I don't have to mail it. I mean, it would fit in the envelope, but it was just kind of bulky and it didn't look very attractive after I put it into the envelope and tried to close it. So there we go, the card. Let me show you how we're going to cut this card base. Now this card base is kind of like a gatefold accordion here. So what I'm going to show you how to do is fold that using, we'll get some of this stuff out of the way, using our scoring tool. Now, the dimension for this card is 10.5 by not 5, as I brought down the measurement just 1/8 of an inch so that I had room to puff up my card a little bit because there are a lot of layers on it even though it's a small card. So I brought this 5-inch measurement down to 4 7/8. So 4 7/8 by 10.5. So you're going to put your 10.5-inch side up at the top of your Stampin' Trimmer or your score tool, and you're going to score at 1 3/4, and then 3.5, and then 7, and then 8 3/4. But don't worry about writing these down. I have all the measurements, all the materials, all the colors, everything I use on this card is on the blog post for this Fun Fold note card. So once again, 1 3/4, 3 1/2, 7, and 8 3/4. Now one thing I will suggest is have your bone folder handy, and you're going to want to use the raised portion of whatever type of scoring tool you're using as a kind of a guide for you, because when you go to close in on this first one, if you do it without having a guide on it, you're going to tend to fold it, and it's going to fold for you, but it's going to be crooked. So what I do is I make sure I'm pushing my card pressure up towards the top of my scoring tool, and then I make sure I'm flush down here at the bottom, and then I can just make a nice scored fold there. And then I do the same thing in folding this one over. I just make sure I've got it flush here, and then I can do a nice crease on that score line. And then I open this back up, and then I do the same thing with this fold. I make sure that this is flush down here because it's very easy to get it crooked. And then I use my bone folder to make a nice crease there. And then I fold back this side. And once again, I just make sure that it's nice and flush down here. And the way to make that nice and flush is by pushing up towards the top, because you have this as your kind of like a holding spot. So there we go. And now we have our gatefold that opens up. So we'll put this aside and talk a little bit about the designer paper in the border. As you can see on this card, the designer paper is doing a lot of work on this card. So we are going to be doing 2 layers here. We're going to have a cardstock layer of Pacific Point, and then we're going to have the designer paper. Now the cardstock layer is, both of them on this dimension go down 1/8 of an inch from the outside of the card. So this Pacific Point, remember this is 4 7/8, so the Pacific Point is going to be, actually it's 2/8, so it's going to be 4 5/8, so this is 4 5/8 by 3 1/4. And this one is 4 5/8 by 1 1/2. So then that in turn brings down your designer paper, because you want a 1/8 inch border on each side. So you have to bring it down 2/8. So this is going to make our designer paper to be 3 by 4 3/8. And then our other piece is going to be 1 1/4 by 4 3/8. So what we're going to do is use our snail or your Tombow, whichever is your favorite adhesive, and we're going to adhere the designer paper, Guarded Impressions, really pretty. I love blue and yellow together. And then we're going to adhere it to the Pacific Point. There is Night of Navy in this designer paper too, as I mentioned before, and I might experiment a little with that Night of Navy. I have some swaps to make, so I might play around with Night of Navy on this card as well. So there we've got our 2 designer paper panels. Okay, so these panels, see that nice, subtle, soft seafoam back there? It's just such a nice popped out color with the card. So what we're going to do is, the first one we're going to put on is this right side. And the reason why we're going to put on the right side is because we're going to use it as a guide. We're going to put a nice 1/8 inch border all around all 4 sides. We're going to use this as a guide when we put this bigger panel on the front, because on this card, the front panel hides that right side panel. It tucks right in there. So we're going to put our adhesive on the card itself, the card base, because we don't want to get, I think I'm right. Oh, no, I didn't. There we go. There we go. Okay. Make sure your designer paper is going the same way. So put your card together and it looks a little upside down. So what you're going to do is close your card up and then line up this on this side kind of as a guide, and then look and see how your other side's looking. And it kind of makes it so that you've got a nice equal border on the top and both sides, the bottom and the other side. So there you've got that part of the card done. Now you're going to want to stamp on the inside, and we're going to use shaded spruce using those new ink pads, and we're going to ink up the sentiment, if flowers were hugs, I'd send you 1,000. So what we're going to do is open up our card, and we're just going to put that right a little bit down from the top and in the middle. There you go. And you've got your sentiment in there, and then you're able to write in there. Now, if you did use a darker card and you wanted to put right on the back, you could put a piece of paper. But like I said, the white and the vanilla are a little, just kind of compete or something with these colors, don't match very well. Okay, so now we have this part of the card here. I want to show you how we're going to make the belly band, but I don't want to close this card up yet. Have you ever closed your card before the ink's dried and then you get a smudge over here? So I'm going to kind of set this one aside and bring back the one we've already made, because I know this is dry here. Just always be careful about that, because so many times the card is ruined in the last seconds of you making it. So what we're going to do is make the belly band, okay? So what I did is I took the So Saffron and I just cut an ample size. Like, it just happens to be a 1/2 inch by an 11 inch on the cardstock side. And so it's a 1/2 inch. And what I did is I usually, let's put a little bit more on one of the sides, because we know we're going to be folding it around to the back. So what I usually do is I don't score it, because then it just doesn't seem to cooperate with me. So I just kind of loosely fold it. I don't give it a lot of, I don't make it super tight, because it's got to go around the card. So just be real gentle with it and just kind of loosely put it around. And then you'll know where you're going to need some snips. My snippers, there you go. And so I am going to just give myself, and I'll cut it at an angle so it looks like I meant it to be that way. And then I'm just going to get it adhered together. And you could also, you could use your snail for that, but I do like to use my tear and tape, especially when I can find it. Ah, there it is underneath that beautiful paper. So I'm just going to put a little tiny bit of tear and tape here. And then I am assured that I have, I'm just going to use the end of my scissors. Get all these pieces on your desk and you can't find the things you need. I'm sure there's a proverb about that. Keep a neat desk and then you're not looking for stuff. So then I just, like I said, I just keep it nice and loose so that it's free flowing on there. So there we go. We've got the little belly band. And then what I did is I looked at the card and thought I would pull out the soft seafoam from the card, the background of the designer paper there. So I stamped the shaded spruce, the sentiment, "There's so much to love about you." And then I took the Pacific Point. Now this oval is in the Layering Ovals Framelit sets. It's the third one from the smallest. So you've got the smallest, the next, and the third one up. And then I just took the Pacific Point, and usually the way I find out which one fits is I just, because a lot of times I pull them out and I think, okay, now if I can see that it's, I can see the one framelit around the other framelit, then I know that's the coordinating one. These framelits are really great because you can create a tight border or a bigger border around them. So I really do love that we came out with those sets, and they come in ovals, circles, and squares. And so what we're going to do is just adhere this soft seafoam to the Pacific Point scallop oval. Okay, and that's going to be going on here. But before I do that, I'm going to put on a piece of the shaded spruce metallic ribbon. Let me show you something that's really cool. Is our grid paper has measurements on it, And I'll tell you what, I suggest if you don't have grid paper, buy a pack of it. It is such a great tool whenever you don't have to grab a ruler or anything, you can just measure it. And what I did is I measured a little bit more than 16 inches using the bottom of my grid paper, and I have my ribbon ready to tie a bow that's offset to the right. Now, one thing that's kind of nice about belly bands is you can adhere the ribbon to the back of the belly band. Now I am using some micro dots. I don't know if you've ever used these. They're really tiny glue dots. They're better to use for a really tiny 1/8 inch material. They're called micro dots, not mini dots. So if you are ever somewhere and you can order some of these 1/8 inch micro dots, they're good to have on hand. For the most part, I can use the mini glue dots, but sometimes I just need one of these micro glue dots, especially if you're working with vellum. It's really nice because you don't see as much adhesive coming through. So what I'm going to do is just put one of these micro dots right on the back of my belly band. And then I'm just going to give myself, let's figure I'm going to be tying over here. So I'm going to be tying, and I'll need a little space over here. So I will just put my ribbon right there on that micro dot. And then it just gives me some stability whenever I'm tying up my bow over here. Okay, and then I'm going to want to put my bow flat there. And then I'm going to just you want to test yourself? Try tying a bow when you're making a video. It'll try your patience. So then I'm just going to tie my bow. I love how that shaded spruce just has that little bit of metallic sheen to it. Then I'm going to, you know what? I think I can cheat with the way it's not cooperating here, and it's a little twisted, because I'm going to show you a little trick on this card. What I did is I put the oval on the belly band, but to keep the ribbon in place, what I did is I took a piece of my tear and tape, and I made sure it was smaller than the width of the label there, the tag, and then I put it directly on top of the ribbon. And then I just took the protective, make sure it's adhered well, and took that protective piece off. And then I have the adhesive to put my tag on. And then it's going to keep the ribbon in place on the front. So there we go. And then I can take some special ribbon cutting scissors, a little bit better to cut than with your paper snips. Don't use your paper snips on your ribbon. It doesn't really work that well. You want to save these paper snips for cutting paper and keeping them sharp. If you play around with them with ribbon, it dulls them, and I just prefer to keep it with paper. So there we go. We have this cute little note card. We put the belly band in So Saffron, and then the Tranquil Tide from the Lee, not the Tranquil Tide, Shaded Spruce. Definitely a different color. Tranquil Tide has a little more bluish in it. The Shaded Spruce has like an evergreen tone to it. So we put that with the So Saffron, and so we have this cute little belly band that comes off to reveal a fun fold, and it's a note card, so you can put it into a note card sized envelope, 3.5 by 5, that you are able to mail through the post office. So I'd love to see if you make a card like this. Feel free to send me a photo. You can send it to cindyleeb@gmail.com. You could text me a picture to 724-323-2296. If you have any questions, please contact me via my email or my phone number. Thanks for buzzing by, friends.